Hi, Mary here from Change is Always Possible, and I had a bit of a rant this morning on an audio, and I am trying to say the same thing now without being quite so sweary and quite so ranty, although I might end up having to be. So what I was talking about was all the crap that we have been fed for years and years and years about how vaccines save lives. And even if that's true, it's a distortion of the facts. Why people in India and Africa and other places like that get ill is because and die in their droves from all sorts of different illnesses. In fact, ones there are vaccines for and ones there aren't vaccines for, is because they are poor. It's because they have really bad, if any, sanitation at all. It's because their nutritionist status is terrible. It's because they don't have clean water. And these are all the things that affect their level of vitality and therefore their resilience and resistance to disease. And, on top of that, you can add in all the stress of living in such conditions. So it just isn't true to say that vaccine saves lives. What vaccines do is replace or act, if anything, at best, they act as a symptom relief for these problems that lie underneath. And we had exactly the same problems in this country. Long before vaccines came in, people died because we had poor sanitation, poor nutrition. We didn't have clean water, and people died of these diseases because of that. And actually, the incidence of children and people dying from things like measles in the UK dropped dramatically long before vaccines came in. This is a massive story that we have been told for decades now, over and over again, that you need to have a vaccine to be healthy. It's not true. What you need to be healthy is you need to be vital. You need to have a certain level of vitality, and that gives you resilience and makes you more resistant to disease. And all of that, the vitality is built on the back of good sanitation, clean water, really good nutrition, excellent sleep, movement, connection with other people, fresh air, vitamin D. It's absolute bullshit that we've been told for years. And if you actually dug into all this like I have for the last 20 years, well, more than 20 years, since I had my children and had to make a decision about whether to vaccinate them or not, I've been interested in this subject, obviously, because I chose not to vaccinate them. So I had to consider how to keep my children healthy and then myself healthy, because I've chosen not to have vaccines. This bullshit that's fed to us that we need to have vaccines to be healthy, it's just not true. And although vaccines may help people in these poorer places on the planet, they're not dealing with the underlying root causes, are they? They never look at these root causes, or if they do, they just pay lip service to them. It's exactly the same in this country. The people who are dying at the moment from COVID are the fragile, right? People who are already unwell, and the elderly, people who live isolated in care homes, whose vitamin D status is on the floor, who are fed high sugar diets. It's no wonder that they're frail and unwell, and they're elderly, so that is their status, but it's not helped by the way they're treated in these places. And on top of all that, the majority of people, the vast majority of people who are dying from COVID are not well. And we have got a real problem in this country with ill health, chronic ill health. And I read a statistic somewhere that something like 30% of the working population is experiencing chronic ill health. That's just the working population. And what about all the people who are so ill they can't work? And what all the people who are ill and elderly? I mean, this is just a nonsense. We've got a massive problem with obesity, right? And nobody needs to be obese, but loads of people are obese. Nobody needs to be suffering with diabetes type 2, but they are. And it's known now that with good nutrition and the right sort of diet and support, people can reverse that that diagnosis. So, you know, a vaccine is never going to solve the fact that people who are old die. It's not going to solve the fact that there are many of people in our country who are chronically ill and unwell. And it is definitely never going to solve the problem of deprivation and inequality. And if you live in a deprived area in our country, particularly in Scotland, the statistics is you're 2.2 times more likely to die from COVID. 2.2 times more likely. So, you know, think of that. If you are chronically unwell, if you lived in a deprived area and you're elderly, then you are at risk from COVID. But vaccine isn't the answer, is it? A vaccine will never, ever reverse any of those issues. And yet people, you know, we're lining up in droves for these vaccines like they're, you know, the second coming or something, that they're going to solve all our ills. And the thing with these vaccines is they're still in their clinical trial stage. They've only been tested for a few months. They're not licensed medications. They've been given special dispensation to be used. And for example, the Oxford AstraZeneca one that is seems to be more and more popular in the UK, it actually states in the information about it on the NHS website that it is a GMO product. Now, I don't know about you, but I think there are lots of us who are not very keen on GMO and we wouldn't like to eat it, but we're injecting it into ourselves. I think, you know, get on the NHS website and just take a look at these vaccines and take a look at the trials and how few people these results were based on. I can't remember which one of them. It might have been the Pfizer one, but they made their decision based on 170 people who got COVID, and there was a certain number of them in the vaccine group and a certain number of them in the placebo group. And on that basis, they decided the efficacy and rolled it out. I don't know about you, but I think something that's going to be used on millions and millions of people needs to be based on more than 170 people. So, and the thing with a vaccine, the vaccines, they're not free from problems. If you can read about all the likely symptoms that you can get, they do harm some people. They're harming people at the moment. People are dying after they've had their vaccine. People are having all sorts of allergic reactions, nerve damage, you know, and how many? We don't even know. We're not being told. So, as far as I'm concerned, anybody who wants to can take the vaccine. But, you know, I don't know that you're properly informed. And you've got to think about this. The vaccine is never going to solve that underlying problem that we have got collectively in our country, in the Western world. What we have now is chronic ill health. It's a new type of malnutrition that's going on, and terrible levels of stress, increasing deprivation. You know, we've got food banks in nearly every flipping town in our country, and the need for them is increasing. We've got children who don't have food to eat every day. This is what the problem actually is. If we didn't have these problems, if our elderly were looked after differently, if this chronic illness was attended to, if the deprivation and inequality in our country was attended to, the death rate from COVID would be dramatically smaller. And that's before we even think about the various potential treatments that for some reason weren't allowed. So, you know, and you've got to think about who benefits from this one way of looking at health, which is to vaccinate, medicate, right? Who benefits? There are companies that are making millions, billions out of what's going on at the moment, you know, and this this is all happening in our so-called Western democracy, this unfairness. But of course, we're not actually living in a democracy anymore, are we? We're living in a totalitarian state, because your government now decides what you can do. You can't leave your house except for specific things that the government's told you that you can leave for. You can't hug your friend or a loved one. You can't even hold the hand of a dying loved one or relative. I mean, this is inhumane, and you can only shop for certain products from certain shops. And who's benefiting from that? The big companies that are making millions, billions in fact, on the back of all of this. You know, the small shops, the small businesses, they're all suffering. They might not make it. Many of them haven't made it and they won't make it. And none of this, all of this stuff that's going on is not addressing the root causes of the problems that we actually have going on. You can vaccinate people till the cows come home, and who benefits is the big multinational pharmaceutical companies. And still we will have chronic ill health. Still we will have issues with our elderly. Still we will have people living in deprivation, whose life expectancy actually is nothing like as high as the age of death from COVID. How would you feel if that was you? We've got this all upside down and back to front, and it really pisses me off. I just can't bear it some days. When I turn on the news and I listen to more of the nonsense coming out. Oh, now we've got the vaccine today, it's AstraZeneca one. It's great because by the autumn they might be able to, have it tweaked so that it can be used for the various variants. Really? So here we go. You're not only going to have one vaccine for COVID, you're going to have at least one more. And my bet is that they're heading towards the idea that we'll have to have it every single year, if not more than once a year, just like the flu vaccine. And who benefits from that? Do you really benefit? Is your health improving? Is your well-being improving? I mean, they can't even tell you if it stops transmission. They can't tell. All they can tell you is that from these small numbers in the trial, that you are likely to have a less bad dose of COVID if you get it. And this is like the best business model going for a company to have a product that every single person on the planet has to have. And it's not just that they have it once, you're going to have it repeatedly for the rest of your life. Well, who wouldn't want that? And why would that not be the agenda that's being pushed? Right? Where's the agenda about the health of the nation? Where's the agenda about pulling people out of deprivation, teaching people how to heal themselves? Because so many of the things that can help us be more vital and able to be resilient to ill health, they don't even cost that much money, but they do need the willingness of government. And our government could have done more about this, and they haven't. They've gone blinkered one route and one route only, and that is the medical model, the big pharma model. They are dominating the whole health landscape at the moment, and I don't think that's a good thing. Right.